Welcome back. It is 11:16 and we're back on midday with our weekly News to You stories. Remembering the Hollywood Madam, when a new food premiered at the Erie County Fair, and when the Bills opened training camp in Fredonia. Dave McKinley has more in our weekly walk back through time when those stories and more were all news to you.
10 years ago this week, after New York became among the first states to adopt the Common Core standards, the results were not good.
I don't have a microphone.
Only 11% of Buffalo public school students were found to be proficient in the subject matter in the first year of this new curriculum. This was the same week the DMV started issuing licenses with black and white photos said to be harder to tamper with and vertical ones for those under 21, making it easier to spot those underage for certain purchases this week in 2013. 20 years ago this week.
It was awesome, man. It was a blast.
Flash mobs were starting to take hold as the newest cultural phenomenon.
I don't know. I wonder why.
And back then, when they'd let just about anyone walk into the Erie County Fair, there was also something brand new in fair food.
They're delicious.
Did you expect it to be delicious?
I did.
This week's News to You pop quiz: which gastronomic delight made its initial appearance at the Erie County Fair 2 decades ago and proved so popular that it's still served today?
It tastes good.
Remember, this was at a time when our dietary choices were actually becoming decidedly less sinful, because 20 years ago this week was also when we learned that
bagged salad products are now the second fastest selling grocery item after bottled water.
And from our News to You, the more things change, the more they stay the same department. Why, looky there. Canadian wildfires burning out of control 20 years ago this week in 2003. 30 years ago this week.
The waiting will be over tomorrow afternoon. That's when Pope John Paul II arrives here in Denver.
Pilgrims from across the country, including 180 from Buffalo, mostly teenagers, flocked to see the popular Pontiff for World Youth Day. After making kisses for 75 years, Hershey's introduced hugs, which they still produce today. And in Western New York, we have the Doobie Brothers playing in the round on that fascinating revolving stage that hosted musical acts for decades at the now bygone Melody Fair. It was also the first time you probably heard the name Heidi Fleiss, the Hollywood Madam, busted for running a high-priced call girl ring in Los Angeles, alleged to have been patronized by many an A-list actor. And that same week, in the small Steuben County town of Savona, a cherubic-looking teenager was accused of a horrible crime. 13 years old at the time, Eric Smith was eventually convicted of murdering a 4-year-old neighbor boy, Derek Roby, and went on to serve 28 years in prison before being released last year at the age of 42 for the heinous crimes he committed as a child this week in 1993. 40 years ago this week, when, if you wanted to see the Blue Jays play in Toronto, you went to Exhibition Stadium, not the Rogers Centre. And if you wanted to see the Bills in training camp, you went to Fredonia, where you cheered players with names like Smirlis and Hazlitt and Cribbs. Your county executive's name was Ed Rudkowski. Reporters doing stories on travel stood in front of an airport that looked like this, and if we needed pictures from the tower, they said, sure, come on up. Try that in a post-9/11 world. This was so long ago that when a convention in Niagara Falls attracted 160 members of the Daughters of the Civil War, there were 4 of them in attendance whose fathers had actually fought for the Union. Think about that this week in 1983, when it was all news to you.
Wow, and here is the answer to this week's News to You pop quiz about that new food item that they debuted at the fair 20 years ago this week. It was the deep-fried Twinkie, which got rave reviews and proved to be so popular that it's become a staple at fairs and carnivals to this day.
I did a live shot from the tower at the airport.
Pre 9/11, huh?
Yeah.
You were allowed to go live.
It was so cool. Absolutely.